What's up, everyone? I'm here. We got another college coach in the building. Coming from New Milford, Connecticut, he's a two-time New England placer, two-time Connecticut State finalist. Now finds himself in Pennsylvania coaching at Ursinus College. We got Mr. Anthony Terlizzi. Anthony, how we doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to talk to you. I'm excited to hear how you went from Connecticut to find yourself coaching in Pennsylvania. So that should be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
But before all that, I always ask everyone, talk to everyone, start off first. When did you find the sport of wrestling?
It's a great question. So I was four. My dad was coaching youth wrestling, and at the time in Connecticut, you had to be in third grade to wrestle, like in like the youth leagues and whatnot. But when he started coaching, he's like, "Listen, I'm not going to coach if my son can't wrestle. Like, I want to spend time with him." And he's like, he'll wrestle the older kids. It's okay. So I didn't win a match, I think, for like 3 years. I kind of got my butt whooped because I was so much younger than everyone else.
Yeah.
So I kind of got my butt whooped for a little while, but I loved it. It was like I would get my butt kicked and come off and be like, that was so fun. But it was just something I fell in love with, and I'm 30 years old now, and it's like one of those things I don't remember a second of my life without wrestling being like the most important
Wow.
outside aspect other than like my family.
Did you do any other sports, or was it just strictly wrestling?
Growing up, I did, I played baseball and football, lacrosse. But once I got to high school, it was just, I knew I loved wrestling, and I knew I was pretty good at it. So I was like, I love doing it. I like doing it all year round. I like traveling, to all these different tournaments. So I'm just going to do this. And I wasn't that great at anything else. So I just stuck with wrestling.
Nice. And you mentioned your dad coached the youth. Was that like the New Milford youth program?
hmm Yeah. So him and Chris Kirkard, his son Connor, was on my team and was a really, really good wrestler as well. Probably the best wrestler New Milford's ever had. So
What was his name?
Connor Kirkard.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
so
that.
we came up together.
He was
Yeah,
small, right?
he was a 106 pounder, 113 his senior year, but he was a beast. So
So, New Milford nowadays, they're one of the powerhouses in Connecticut. Were they always like that? Even when you were in youth, were you guys looking up to the high schoolers like, wow, they're good?
yeah, so we were always tough. Coach Burns was the coach. He's actually in the Hall of Fame. We were in the double L at the time when I was younger. He would get basically as close at the time as you can get to beating Danbury, and it just kind of wouldn't go his way. But they were some really good teams. I mean, we used to look up to guys like Cody Griswold, Michael Belgamba, the Stephanatos brothers, Tom Farrell. I mean, I could go on for. I'm not leaving anyone out on purpose, I promise. But but we could go on for days about just the studs, and they would always come down to the youth practices too. Our youth team was really good though, and we kind of knew like there was a year behind me and a year before me, and then my year, where we had a lot of really good guys. And then when I got to high school, we kind of we got pretty good. We took second and in the state a couple times, and then my junior year we were able to win our first state title. And but my sophomore year we beat Danbury. I think we were the first team to beat Danbury in like 200 and something in-state match. I mean, not counting.
That was in a duel.
Yeah, we beat them in duel. I think besides Mount Anthony, so anybody in state, I think we were the first team, and it was a long time. I don't want to, exaggerate it, but it was a really, really long time since anyone had beaten them, and we definitely weren't supposed to. We had a couple guys out, but we were young, and I was really fortunate we got to wrestle for Coach Chris Peel, who's actually going in the Hall of Fame now. His first year as head coach was my freshman year. So, I give a lot of credit to him. I mean, he kind of had us in the mindset of like, we didn't know we weren't supposed to win. So, we kind of just dominated everybody. We had a couple hiccups. But yeah, we kind of crushed people, and then my junior year, we killed everybody. we crushed everybody. And that, yeah, we had, I think, like 5 or 6 guys in the state finals, and three or four state open placers, a couple finalists, myself and Connor, a couple New England placers. Connor won it. I took 5th or 6th or something like that. A couple other qualifiers. I mean, we were really good.
Milford's always been there, dude. It's
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky. We've had some just awesome coaches. You know what I mean? I don't want to, from the youth all the way up through the high school. I mean, Coach Peel, he changed my life. You know what I mean? As far as like as much as a wrestling coach. I mean, I still talk to him once a week, twice a week. He was one of the first people to call me after my wife gave birth. I mean, it's like that's how the whole program is. We're New Milford's a blue collar town, so wrestling's a super big deal. The administration, as far as I know, they still are, but when I was there, they were ultra supportive of us. Yeah, I couldn't have had a better opportunity. I mean, I had 2 Hall of Fame coaches.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. Yeah, my experience with New Milford is kind of funny. So growing up, I played baseball, and they would always bust us up in baseball too. And then in middle school, when I took up wrestling, I heard New Milford was really good too. So I was like, oh, of course they are. So I've always just had a fear of New Milford in my mind.
I mean, for us, it was like Coach Peel's philosophy was like, we're going to have our guys that are really, really good at wrestling, and we're going to make them better. And then we're going to have our guys that we're pulling out of the hallways to fill some weight classes, and they may not be the most talented guys, but they're going to be in the best shape. They're going to be tougher than everyone else. And, he used to get a lot of flack, unfortunately, because he was really, if you didn't know him and you didn't know us, it looked like he was really, really hard on us, which he was. I mean, he held us to the highest standard. I mean, it was not like there was no secret to what our goals were, but he would get a lot of flack, but, because you'd look at him and it looked like he'd have his finger in your face or something, but it was never like, you stink, you're terrible. It was always like, I know you're better than that. You wrestled hard, but I know you can wrestle harder. Like it was never, I never felt like it was negative. It was always like, he just wanted us to be better. And as good as we were, or as good as we thought we could be, he was like, you can be better than that. So, I mean, it's very cliche to be like my coaches, but I was lucky. We had great coaches, and then I'd be remiss to say I wrestled. I know this is not the most New England thing of me, but I wrestled in New York for my club coach, Iowa style at the time. It's now Empire.
It's related to New England, a bunch of New England.
Yeah, a lot of New England guys go there. So I was one of I would say one of the first probably New England guy to start going there. Coach Steagle's another great guy. I mean, I've just been so blessed to have great coaches and great partners. Right around me was, Kevin Jack was just a couple years younger than me, and, his brother and a couple other Danbury guys, Johnny Garcia. So, yeah, so we were good. Yeah, like I said, I was really lucky to have great coaches, the best teammates in the world. We still hang out, we still talk. So, Connor Kirkar was an
important relationship,
I mean, Connor Kirkar was the best man at my wedding. He lives 30. We both live in Pennsylvania. He lives 35 minutes from me. So it's like, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have any of that without New Milford Wrestling. It's like the thing I'm most thankful for in my life. So.
Mm-hmm. And kind of talking about, your junior and senior year individually now.
Mm-hmm.
How did it feel, like you're on this team full of placers, all New England, all state. Your sophomore year, you don't even place at opens. And then your junior and senior year, you become you make the finals. So
I actually did.
Yeah, did it feel like you had a fire under your ass with all that competition in the room?
It's a really funny story, actually. So I did place my sophomore year at 140, which is probably why you didn't see it, because I wrestled 130 and 135 all year. So I was weighing in at 130, which is a far cry from, anything I wrestled after that. But Coach Peel told me a week before SWCs, he's like, hey, I think I'm going to bump you up. And I'm thinking he's going to bump you up to 35. And he's like, no, I'm going to bump you to 140. And I looked at him like he was crazy. I was like, dude, you are out of your mind. And he's like, I'm telling you, it's better for you. It's better for the team. I was like, okay, if that's what you think. I went home, talked to my dad, and my dad was like, if you want to do it, and if that's what your coaches think, my parents are great. I talk about my coaches, my parents were the best. They were the most supportive. They never got in the way of my coaches and my decisions. They were like, if you think it's best, then great. If that's what your coach is telling you to do, you're doing it. But so I bumped up to 140, wrestled at SWCs and didn't place at SWCs, which is like a 7-man bracket. It's a small tournament. And now I'm like, this is such a bad idea. I go to the L's. I kind of just have a good tournament. I end up making to the semis, lose. Back then, it was only top 4 would go to the Open. So I ended up winning my Conti semi match against a tough Fairfield Ward kid. Ended up going to the Open. I took 4th at the L, going to the Open. I was a 15 seed out of 16. Won my first match. Ended up losing the quarters. Wrestled all the way back. And I beat Tyler Cunningham in the Conti semi in the match to go to New England. Tyler was a better wrestler than me, but I think I just kind of had the attitude of like, I don't know that I'm not supposed to win this match. And was able to win, took 4th at the Open, and then
was it only 4 from Connecticut go to New England?
Yeah, so top 4, and then so I was 2-2 at New England that year. Beat a tough kid from Mount Anthony, but one of my biggest bragging points, I never lost to a Mount Anthony kid. I know you had Coach Legacy on here before, but I never lost to a Mount Anthony guy.
Not many people could say that, probably.
No, definitely not. And I wrestled them all the time. So, but then so after that, it was like.
Well, so then did you feel like you knew you were at the left?
It was kind of like, whoa.
Like you knew you were right there.
Yeah, I guess I am pretty good at this. So yeah, I trained my butt off, kind of matured a little bit, like physically, went up in weight, just got bigger and stronger. Trained, like, for me, I went from training what I thought was training hard to like really training hard. And then my junior year, I had a great year. Like you said, I was in the finals, made it to the semis in New England, got a concussion. So I ended up injury defaulting to 6th.
That was one of my questions, because I saw it was, it's you don't have Flow Arena back then, so you can't be match by match. But I saw it just said default, so I was wondering what happened.
Yeah, so I was wrestling in the quarters. I was wrestling a kid from Timberland, and I was beating him with like 5 seconds left. He was on top, and I just kind of like bellied out, and he just elbowed me in the back of the head. So I got a concussion. I tried to wrestle my semifinal match and didn't go great.
Do you think it was intentional?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't want to call anyone out, but it's on film. It wasn't trying to hide it. But yeah, so I ended up placing 6th. And then the following year, I think I had like 4 losses in 2 years or something like that. So I mean, at that point, I was just like, again, thanks to my coaches, it was just like, hey, it's not about just winning. It's like, you gotta kill people. We need the team points. It's good for you. It's just like the mentality we had. It's like, we don't just want to beat people. We want to like embarrass them. And that was kind of what we did. Different ends of the spectrum. You'd have Connor who'd pin somebody in like 12 seconds. And then I would beat someone with 30 to 15 and just take them down 15 times. So you had it totally different ways, but we kind of just dominated people. And same thing that year, made state finals.
Did you didn't face the same kid, did you?
No, different kid. Yeah, that was, I lost to Jake Savoca from Daniel Hand. He was tough. He was really, really good. Him and Tyler Cunningham were probably the 2 best guys I wrestled. I mean, Tyler beat me. I'd beat Tyler. I'd beat Jake. He'd beat me. Jake had got the better of the series. I got the better of the series with Tyler. But same with South Windsor kid.
Odell?
Odell, yeah, Sam Odell. He was tough too. So there was a lot of tough kids. Cunningham was, he had gotten bigger, so he wasn't in my weight my senior year, um, but yeah, Jake Savoke was as tough a character as they come. Just a Tugman guy. Tugman was the coach of Daniel Hand at that time. And Tugman's a great coach. I have nothing but respect for him and his guys. And yeah, Jake was his tough character, man. So I lost to him. And then at the Open, lost to Odell. And then at New England, I beat Odell, lost to Savoca again. Ended up taking 5th, I think. But I lost, and it's still this way now. They don't seed the tournament. It's just kind of like they just slot it in. I had the kid from Methuen in like the round of 16, and he was ranked first.
Massachusetts state champ or something.
Yeah, he was a stud. He was New England finalist the year before. We had a back-forth match, and then I lost, and I ended up losing. And then I had to win like 6 matches coming back. It was a ton of matches coming back. And thank God I was cutting a ton of weight that year. Thank God they didn't have a day 2 weigh-in.
You're 145, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so it's funny. You ended up, being
an 84 pounder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, an 84 pounder in college. So, it was, and it wasn't easy to make that. But making 45 in high school was no joke. It's no joke.
What do you think your natural weight was back then, like 55 or something?
Well, I could tell you that day 2 in New England's. I think it's still like this, but I'm not 100% sure. There's no way in day 2 in New England's when I was in high school. Is it still like that?
I don't think so.
Okay, so when I was in high school, there was no weigh-in day 2. It was day 1 weigh-in plus 2 more pounds. So you got your plus 2 for Christmas, and then another plus 2 for New England. So it was 49. When I wrestled, right before I wrestled Sam Odell in the blood round at New England's, I stepped on the scale. It was day 2, and I think I was like 168 or 170.
No way.
I got big. I used to get really, really big. But that wasn't abnormal. Coming down to 47, we wrestled on a Saturday. I usually wrestle like 52 during the week and then 45 on the weekends, just because it was so hard to make. And there was no descent plan back then. It was just like you weighed in wherever, and if you weighed in, you can wrestle that weight. Things are a lot safer now, but I would probably get up to like 161, 162, and that was like kind of controlling myself. So yeah, it was tough. My mom doesn't know that. She's not gonna be very happy when she hears this. But
sometimes you gotta spill the beans,
Yeah, right. But yeah, it was great. I loved every second of being a New England wrestler. New England is the most underrated tournament in the country by far. I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania now, so we recruit Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Don't get me wrong; those states are as good as anywhere in the country. But these New England guys are a lot tougher, and you're seeing that at now you're really starting to see it at the Division I level, but the Division II and Division III level especially. Division III there's a ton of New England guys that are just doing so well. I mean, there's a lot of great coaches like Coach Legacy you just had on. Lonnie Morris is a good friend of mine. Coach Sugarmeyer at Western New England. I mean, again, I could go on. Coach Jones from Rhode Island College. Great dude. I almost went to Rhode Island. It was a tough decision. So.
Yeah, but so how did you end up in Iowa?
Yeah, so I went to Luther College for my first 2 years.
How did that happen? When did you
I had a really, really good run at NHSCA's my junior year. I made it to the blood round of NHSCA's as a junior. And back then those brackets were 100 plus people. So I think I went like 8-2 and didn't place or something like that. Beat a lot of really tough guys, guys that would go on to be All-Americans and whatnot, but unfortunately I didn't place, but made it to the blood round, had a great Super 32 that year. Same thing when we won like 6 or 7 matches at the Super 32. So they started calling me after that. I liked the coaches they call me every week. They followed my results. Not that other coaches didn't. Um, I was I was pretty set. I was almost pulling the trigger on just going to Rhode Island before I even visited. And they kind of talked me into visiting. They're like, just come for a visit. Just come for a visit. Coach Mitchell, still a coach there, great guy. So I fly out there, take my visit, and I fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the community. Didn't realize how tough it would be to be that far from home. That's ultimately why I ended up coming back. Nothing bad about the school, nothing bad about the coaching staff. I know sometimes that's why guys transfer. I don't want that to be, I just got homesick, to be honest with you.
It happens,
Yeah, but yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up there. Wrestled there for my first year. Unfortunately, got hurt pretty bad. I had a really good first tournament. Got hurt, blew my shoulder out. Tried to wrestle through it, just kind of couldn't put it together. Ended up getting surgery, so I missed the whole next year. Like my whole sophomore year, I missed. Decided I was going to transfer. Want to be a little closer to home. Had a couple options. LIU Post at the time was Division II. They were just starting their Division II program. They were a big time player, but because I would have been transferring up a division, I would have had to sit out another year. So that kind of ruined that. Rhode Island again was a player, and then actually to circle back, Connor Kirkgard was at Del Val. He was wrestling at Del Val, and he's like, "Hey man, just come visit. Like, we need guys, obviously." And I went and visited. Obviously, him being there played a huge part in me going there. Like the campus, like the guys on the team. So transferred there. Wrestled my first year. Was a backup to a national qualifier blood round guy at the NCAA tournament. They didn't have the extra countable matches back then, but we wrestled a lot. Still wrestled a bunch of tournaments. And then the following year, felt like I could have been the guy at 84. We were supposed to wrestle at the Navy Classic on a Saturday. The Wednesday before that, I blew my shoulder out. I tore my bicep, and the doctor kind of told me, he's like, "I can stitch you back up. You can wrestle again, but it's not going to go well. And if you get hurt another time, we're gonna be looking at some serious issues here long term." So I made the tough call to kind of just like start transitioning into coaching, which was really hard, man, because it's like I told you, I've been wrestling since I was 4. So making the transition, and all of a sudden it's just like one day it's like, that's it, you're done. Everyone knows our career is going to come to an end at some point, but you usually can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's just like, for me, it was like, oh, here I am. So that happened. And, yeah, it's, and the transition to coaching, which is the best move I've ever made in my life.
Yeah. Where did you actually do your first stint at? It was back home, right?
Well, so when I was transferring, I coached at New Milford when I was trying to figure out where I was going. So I coached at New Milford for a year with Coach Peel. Again, greatest student in the world.
Yeah, it's probably nice to be under him, see how, the program is run,
Seeing it from the other side of things especially was important. I actually worked for him too. He owned a landscaping business, so I worked for him and coached with him. So I spent a lot of time with Coach Peel, which I loved every second of it. But yeah, I got to see how he runs things, and it was exciting.
In that year, you guys won a Class L state title, right?
Yeah, won a state title. But again, it was one of those things where it's like you expected to win, so it wasn't really like, looking back on it, I was like, man, that's cool. But like in the moment, you were like, we were supposed to do this, so it's not that big a deal. Mm-hmm. And then I went back to competing, so it was kind of coached for a year in between competition. And then after I finished competing, I coached for a year at Del Val. And then I got a call from, at the time, the head coach at Ursinus was Bill Racich. He had been the coach there for over 30 years. He had just had a handful of assistants retire or just kind of step away from coaching. He called me, and we knew each other through like a mutual connection. He knew I was interested in, possibly moving on from Del Val because, just some differences in opinion and whatnot. But it's also tough to coach guys you were teammates with.
Yeah.
And then, so made the move over to Ursinus as like a volunteer assistant. He was throwing me like $100 a month just to like pay for gas a little bit.
Nice.
I coached with him for a year. He actually ended up passing away like unexpectedly. And there was like an interim year where I was still there. And then they hired Joe Jamison, who's the director of wrestling now, head coach, director of wrestling. He was coaching at Princeton for a long time. Awesome dude. He kept me on staff. We added a women's program not long after that. So that's when he went from head coach to director of wrestling. And that's when I went from like assistant coach to associate head coach. So my journey's kind of been crazy. I went from competing, getting hurt, not knowing what the sport was going to have in store for me, to getting a call, getting another opportunity, going from getting $100 a month, maybe being a volunteer assistant, to being an associate head coach of 2 wrestling programs. So, it's been a wild journey. I'm super thankful for that. So,
yeah, it really is. And, Ursinus, it's a school that, I definitely didn't really know too much about, and I'm sure other New England kids don't know much about. So, what's it like down there? What's the campus like? What's the school like?
So we're a smaller school. It's about 1,600 students. We're like 25 miles from Philadelphia. So we're like Philadelphia suburb school, beautiful area. Collegeville is the safest town in the United States. That's where we're located. So it's a beautiful town, very family oriented. The campus is like something out of a movie. It's a beautiful campus. Everybody lives on campus, so it's not like really a commuter school. Academically, we're on every list you could find for top schools in the country. So we're a very academic heavy school, excuse me. It plays a big part in who we recruit and what they want to do with their lives. We're looking for guys and girls that are motivated on the mat, off the mat. We're one of the top schools in the country, the top college in the country that offers women's wrestling academically. So we fill a lot of boxes, especially for the young women that are looking for opportunities. We have almost a 90% med school acceptance rate. So we're 100% law school acceptance rate. So we're as good a school as you're going to find, especially for the young women out there. And even for the guys, obviously, if that's what you want, if you want a school that's going to challenge you athletically and academically, we're your spot. On staff, we have Division I All-American and Mike Spade. He wrestled at Bloomsburg. We have 2 guys that wrestled at Malvern and Brown, the Tanzi twins. And they both wrestled. Nick wrestled on the Canadian World Team last year, wrestled at World Championships. And they'll both be attempting to make the Canadian World Team next year again. So we have, and then Coach Jamison, like I said to you before, we have a ton of experience on staff. We just won our 2nd conference title, 5th in the region. On the men's side, we had an All-American, only freshman All-American in the country for Division III. We had, so it was really cool. On the girls' side, we've had our first 2 seasons. We didn't have a recruiting year. Our first 2 seasons, our first year, we had 2 national qualifiers. They both made the blood round. Last year, we had 2 different national qualifiers. And they both won matches at the national tournament, or they won matches at the national tournament. Next year we're hoping we're projecting 4, 5, 6, maybe more national qualifiers on the women's side. On the men's side, we feel really good about our team. We obviously have a returning All-American, which is great. We have a couple other young guys that were knocking at the door of being national qualifiers. We do graduate 1 national qualifier and 1 guy that was a match away from being a national qualifier, but as well as some other really great seniors. But we have some really young guys that are just ready to step up, and I think we're going to be in good shape for a little while. But we're always looking for more guys and girls, and would love to really start getting more of these New England guys. And New England girls are as good as you'll find. So
Yeah, the girls wrestling in New England is really, really
it's
top
it's
quality.
exploded.
I mean, you look at, NHSCA duels are going on right now. On the girls' side, Metro West made the quarterfinals, and then the Doe girls, I believe, lost by like 4 in the semis or something like that. It was real
Yeah.
close. So, some great talent.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, New England women, and that's like another thing, right? Like, as close as I am with Coach Peel, I have to stay equally close, if not, start sending him a better Christmas gift because his daughter's a freshman and she's a stud. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that on a podcast or not, but I'm gonna. But
Did his son graduate? He has a son named Max,
yeah,
right?
yeah, his son coaches with him.
Oh, nice, nice.
So yeah, Max was, again, I grew up, Max was like 5, I think, when Coach started coaching, and his daughters were just born, so I've known them their whole life. But yeah, but no, we're trying to got a couple New England girls we're talking to, a couple New England guys we're talking to this year, so hopefully that works out. They're really tough. Trying to keep them away from all these really good New England schools like Castleton and Johnson and Wales and Coast Guard, right? Trying to keep them away from those guys, which is hard because they're right in their backyard. But, there's nothing in the world like Pennsylvania wrestling. As coming from a New England guy, I got to say, it's like everybody, everywhere you go. And I think New England is getting there as far as like the community around wrestling. But in Pennsylvania, it's like, it's what they do. Everybody knows like the wrestling team and the wrestling coaches, and
like their football team,
it's like Texas football.
Yeah.
That's Pennsylvania wrestling, and we're in the mecca of that. We're in the largest. Where Collegeville is in the center of the largest youth league in the country. So like kids are coming up in this area. They're Ursinus fans. That's what we want, right?
Cool.
So, but yeah, we want more New England guys and New England girls. So, get in touch with me if you're interested. I'm probably already in touch with them, but if they're interested, get in touch with me, and I'll get them down here, get them on campus. And we have an RTC. We were the first Division III school in the country to have an RTC. We're going this weekend. We're taking our guys to U23s. We're taking 11 guys to U23s. We took 7 girls to U23 World Team Trials last month in Spokane, Washington. So yeah, we're a Division III school, but we don't act like it.
Doing everything you can to.
That's it, man. We love wrestling, and we want to get as much of it as possible.
Exactly.
So
another thing that I wanted to ask you about, and since you guys started a women's team recently, do you guys have the same facilities? Has there been like an upgrade because of that? Did you guys have to build?
Yeah. So we have the same facility. We were able to get, we have some pretty generous alumni, so they were able to donate. We got new mats, all new mats, new competition mats for the guys, and then a freestyle mat for the girls. Our facility is pretty good in size. Obviously, you always want more, right? And that, I think down the road is something we're going to look into. But right now it's just, we're doing good with what we have, and as much as it's great to have the biggest facility in the country or whatever, it's gotta work hard, gotta get better at wrestling, gotta coach hard, gotta recruit the right kids, right? So all that stuff still matters. But eventually I'd like to think so. Just not at the moment.
Got you. And you kind of mentioned this earlier, but like, I guess to go more in depth, you mentioned, you got Pennsylvania, New Jersey in your backyard to recruit from, but you're still looking at some people from New England. Did you almost have to like edge your coaches and be like, hey, push them in that direction? Like, hey, look at these kids from up north, I know the talent's good up here. We don't gotta just look in these states.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for me, I work with a great group of coaches. They trust me. Now they do bust my chops a little bit because they're all Pennsylvania guys. So they bust my chops a little bit about being from New England, and they're all from Pennsylvania. So I not much I can say.
Yeah.
But no, they, obviously all having wrestled, like the 2 guys I was telling you about before, they wrestled at Brown. So they have New England guys, and the guy that coached at Princeton, they had some New England guys. Same with Bloomsburg. Like, so, Bloomsburg had Rich Perry, right? So it's like
Yeah, that's true.
they have all been around New England guys that were good. So they
I know
know the
there's some
talent's
diamonds
there.
in the rough.
Yeah, they know the talent's there. And that's kind of the thing, right? Like, I think most people's sentiment outside of New England is like, hey, the top talent is as good as almost anywhere you'll find. And I can vouch for that, right? Um, but it's that depth that maybe we're missing. And again, I think that's changing. I do. I think New England wrestling is getting a lot better. Just you have all these clubs now that just didn't exist. I mean, I think when I was in high school, it was like KT Kids, Tugman was relatively new, but they were around. Doughboys, Northeast Elite, and Smitty's Barn, and that was kind of like those were your big names. Now some of those are still the big heavy hitters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know they're bigger now, and there are more kids, and there are more clubs, and everyone seems to have access that just wasn't always there. I mean, I remember when we were wrestling at New England's, if you got a kid from Maine in the first round, you were like, "This is great, this is awesome. I'm gonna smoke this kid." And now it's not like that. Maine's got some tough dudes. Maine is one of the better states. I mean, it's smaller, obviously, but yeah, I mean, you have like Pagansett, who's like, or Panagansett. I'm not even sure how you pronounce it, right? I don't even know that school. I don't even know that school. When I was in high school, that school, I don't even know if it existed, right? Yeah. And now they're one of the best teams in the country. Mm-hmm. So obviously the New England wrestling has evolved. And as a fan of wrestling in general, and then obviously still having a lot of times, my parents still live in New Milford. So, I'm back up in New Milford all the time. So following it, because I've known these people my whole life, right? Mm-hmm. You could just tell. But yeah, I mean, Xavier, for example, they were always tough, always, right? Yeah. But like Cunningham obviously has done things in the last handful of years that are taking that program to the next level.
Yeah, they just.
Now, I'd love to see New Milford beat them, but it's tall task.
They're SWC or no. Xavier's SCC, I think, right?
SCC, I think. Yeah, I'm not 100%.
But you guys are both L's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, again, which is funny because they were not.
They were double L's back in the. I remember when my freshman year, I think they were double L's, and then the next year they transitioned to L's.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, the L's for us was New Milford, Fairfield Ward, Daniel Hand, both Bristols, Bristol Central and Bristol Eastern were tough. Mm-hmm. Those were kind of the heavy hitters out of the L. So Bacon Academy, no, they were M. Bacon Academy used to be tough too.
Yeah, I remember hearing they used to be real good.
Really tough.
So, since you've recruited in Pennsylvania and Jersey and New England, what can you say some of the differences are between the styles of wrestling, if any?
They're very different. Right? So, Pennsylvania guys they're a little bit like, I hate to say meaner, but they're a little bit meaner. They're very complete wrestlers, great position, good on their feet, really like tough rides on top. They may not turn you as much as far as like your quick turns go or your crab rides go, but they're going to run a bar and try and rip your shoulder off and take it home with them. New Jersey guys are as slick as they come. And I'm generalizing, obviously. There's guys from every state that are good at all sorts of things, but New Jersey guys are slick. They're usually very technically savvy. You got some great coaches in New Jersey, some great clubs. Obviously, Pennsylvania is what it is. I don't even have to speak on that, right?
We all know.
M2, Stellar trained. I mean, young guns. Apaches is out by me. They do a great job. But New Jersey's got some great wrestlers too. They're really slick. Usually their takedowns are as good as you're gonna find. And the New England guys are a good mix, right? But they're usually tough on top, but in a different way. Your leg riders, crab rides, a little bit more funky. Forever, Smitty's Barn didn't even try and hide it. They were going to take top, and it was their choice. That was their thing. Like their T-shirts would say "Take top" on the back of them. I will never forget that. When I was wrestling in New England one year, I was wrestling the Timberland kid, and I'll never forget Coach Peel and Coach Burns were like, hey, listen, before the match, and when it's our choice, we win the flip, don't pick bottom. And I was like, okay. 0-0 after the first period. They won the flip, the third. I looked at the corner, I was like, bottom.
Man.
Which it was tough. Getting off the bottom of that kid was tough. I probably shouldn't have done it. I mean, I didn't get turned. I got out, but it was a lot of work. And those, yeah, so I would say like they're sticky on top. You know, they ride legs like no one's business. You know, and I should have known better. I had a leg rider. Connor Kirkhardt is one of the best leg riders I've ever met in my life. I mean, the kid's 6'3", 106, 113 pounder. He was just all legs, right? So,
yeah, you just
you know,
throw it in a mile away.
He was just from a mile away, he's putting a leg in, and you were going to get pinned, right? He pinned his guy in the New England finals in like a minute. So, you know, it was like, it was going to happen. So I should have known better, but I didn't. I'm stubborn. So,
yeah, well, it happens. Hindsight is 20/20.
Right.
So, kind of like the last thing I want to ask you is, you know, I feel like, you know, and I definitely could be 100% wrong for most people, but I feel like some kids, you know, some New England kids are scared to kind of seek out the colleges out of New England, you know, seek out the colleges in Pennsylvania and Jersey. So, you know, what would be your message to those kids that are, you know, kind of maybe a little intimidated by the competition in those states?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a really great question. I think a lot of these guys, it's outside their comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these guys they don't know how good they can get until they get outside of their comfort zone, and that's what we provide, right? You're not going to find a more loyal staff and a more tight knit group of guys than we have, or girls, right? Same thing. Than we have here at Ursinus, and we're going to push you. We're going to take you outside your comfort zone, but you're going to get better. And you can continue to stay in New England and do the same thing you've been doing since you've been wrestling. You grew up in New England. You can continue to go to school in New England, but is that going to make you the best wrestler? Maybe. I don't know. I mean,
it might, but
it might, right? But you might need the challenge, and you might need a change of scenery, and we can provide that for sure. I mean, we're not, and that's the kicker, right? Is like, we're not that far. Like, I can get to my parents, like I said, still live in New Milford. I can get there in
2-3 hours.
I hit traffic, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So even if you're in Boston, you know, 5 hours out in that Boston area, there's a lot of great wrestling there, right? Mm-hmm. 5 hours, that's not that bad. You know, it's like, it's really not. So, yeah. You know, but yeah, I mean, like I said, we're lucky. We have a great staff. We have a great support system. Our administration is second to none. They love wrestling. Our college administration loves wrestling. We're lucky. Our wives love wrestling. My wife is the best in the world. We met when I was still just towards the end of my competition. And so it just basically our whole dating and now marriage, and now I have a baby. And
yeah, you are just welcomed a future All-American into the world, right?
Yes. Yeah, future All-American. He'll be a month old today. Thank you. Yeah, but you know, she's been as supportive as ever, as you can be, which is important too, right? Like, you want to find a school with a staff that, as funny as it sounds, their wives aren't telling them to retire. Yeah. Those are things that you kind of don't think about as a 18-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, Anthony, is there anything else you'd like to talk about or touch on?
No, man, just keep doing your thing. You're doing a lot for New England wrestling. And as a fan, I appreciate it. It makes my life trying to find results and rankings, and as a coach, finding rankings can sometimes be a bear. But you're making it a lot easier, and I think you're giving New England wrestling the light it's needed for a long time. So keep doing that, and you know, you're gonna be continuing this hopefully for a long time, and making my life easier for a long time. And I just appreciate you having me on, and kind of, like I said, doing what you're doing.
Of course.